is that there is coming a time, in the next decade or at the end, towards the end of this decade, possibly cost would be taken over by the kind of average selling price at which solar power will be sold. Now, if I consider potential, now this is the official estimate of potential as you would find in the very long run, as you would find in the Planning Commission's 11th plan document. I could not check and be sure about what is the 12th plan finally meaning. So I gathered these from the several sources. Now, but if you consider, I would draw your attention to this thing. This I compiled from various sources of reports, expert committee and all that. You just see total green power capacity, excluding, on the basis of new renewables only, can be 3254 gigawatt for India. And 3404 would be if you exclude large hydro. And it can then ultimate, this is the long run, 6.6 trillion unit or 6.9 trillion unit of the green energy. And but what has been the cumulative capacity? It is only till now 63.48, which is just 1% of the, or less than 1% of the total potential. So there is enough scope is there. Now that has to be, we how to achieve that. Can I have some time, or I should?
I would say that you please go on, because Mr. Mathur is still engaged in his meeting. So we'll have the pleasure of listening to you for a little more time.
Now the point is this: the price or cost which I was showing. Now we have the financial price or cost. The real competitive or real choice of technology depends on the socio-economic cost. Now, I do not have socio-economic cost estimated in for all the options. But what the Pune Institute report has done, as meticulously as possible, to work out the socio-economic cost of coal thermal. Now, if I compare this coal thermal, I will show you the numbers. If I compare with whatever the present range of prices of the renewables, well, it is very obvious that there is a big advantage cost-wise we would be having by switching to renewables, because how much cost we can save. Now, in terms of financial cost, a switch to renewables can save certain costs when you take a macro total view. One is my cost of mining and transportation of coal. Second is cost of fuel oil as a secondary fuel. All the coal thermal plants. It comes to about $10 billion per annum. This is the number. There are hidden subsidies which was discussed and raised in our fossil fuel. And that would be saved. And there is the cost of environmental externalities. Now, we in the Pune Institute, we worked out the number for coal, and I'm showing you those numbers. Now, began with a base tariff with certain very plausible assumptions, the way regulatory commissions and they are fixing the price. Now, please look at this. This is the comparative cost. Imported coal, if you have 0% or 90%, what is the range of variable cost? There is rupees per unit. Estimated cost based tariff, how much it is. So how much is the share of variable cost? Then is important is what is hidden cost. If my basic tariff is 3.78 and 3.78, then my minimum is of the 0.45 is the hidden cost of subsidy. When I have total cost estimated base tariff is 5.86, then almost about a rupee is the hidden cost of subsidy. Then comes to externality. How do we estimate this? Naturally, these are non-tradable, environmental benefits of cost. Now here, what was done, you might have heard about the Extern E study conducted by Epstein and his team, colleagues. This is in the context of Europe and a few other countries. Now, using that methodology, if we work out, then for coal, it varies between 4.4 to 12.64. Naturally, these were all worked out for a set of projects, say 15 to 20 projects. Then the total true cost becomes 8.63, to range is 19.44. Middle value is 14. Now, if we now compare these with even, say, solar, which is the highest cost at the moment, that is between 10 to 13. So this is, I am not saying that they do not have any external cost of externality. There would be some, even with wind and solar. But that would be obviously much less, because the kind of parameters with which we have to work, they are of very low order. So whereas these abiotic new renewables are concerned. Now, I am not discussing the employment generation potential, but I've just, before I end up about, saying about the other things, we have to remember one thing. We all feel that, okay, when we switch to renewables, two points I would flag here. Oh, then the coal is not required, hydro is not required, gas is not required. This is a wrong notion. Because we have these producers of these renewables would be small establishments widely distributed across the country. So you have what is called by these propagator of third industrial revolution, there would be emerge a new landscape of distributed capitalism. And it is easier to say that than done. We have, on the other hand, large point centers of consumption of electricity. Steel plant, cement plant, paper plant, railway traction. Can you wish them away? Now, this coordination between their load demand and supply from all these have to be coordinated. It is for this reason, for the automated coordination, what you require is, of course, very strong grid power and smart grid for automated coordination. This is one. Second, in spite of if you have a smart grid, it cannot resolve all your problem. We must have some backup power, a facility with hydro and gas, which we will switch on whenever these large centers load goes up. Then a third point, which Kaushik raised about the decentralized versus all large centralized installations. Well, the demand in conventional system of power system planning, demand was fluctuating. And we could plan supply to meet that fluctuating demand, because we could store at least the resource. But now the problem is that even if both the supply side, your air flow, your solar, that is also the source is fluctuating over seasons, over time of the day. We need, in fact, the 15 minutes data, minute by minute data on demand as well as on the availability of resource. These are, in fact, the challenges which are involved. We have to improve the information system, and also we have to improve the coordination system. The power dispatch programming has to be of the highest order of sophistication. And this makes the whole thing highly knowledge intensive and capital intensive. So it's not an easy thing. Still, there are lots of challenges, lots of bridges we have to cross. And these are, in fact, the implications, what you wrote in the letter, that what are the implications of innovation. These are really the implications of innovation. Now, it is because of this some resource, either in the physical form or at least I can switch on and get it from. That is why large hydro's role and gases role would be there. Now I just come to, I made a projection, I think, give me 5 minutes, it will be over.
This is the only presentation.
You see, now people will also get bored listening to me. As a teacher, I am quite aware of that. Now, you see, I myself did a projection study that, okay, if there is 8% GDP growth, and if I assume that 2009 is my base year, there will be no real energy price inflation from 2009 onwards. Suppose real price of energy remains constant. And another scenario, no, the real energy price inflation will take place at the rate of 3% per annum. For this, I even now acknowledge late Mr. Lavraj Kumar, who was our guru in 80s and early 90s, how to make assumptions about these things. And I later, time to time, I checked that real energy price, at what rate it is growing. In spite of all regulation and all things, more or less trend is, around 3%. Now, if I assume these two, and assume that, well, growth is driving, say, 8%, then this 2031, that row, gives me in billion kilowatt hour as the demand, as the requirement for supporting the growth. So it varies between 2.6 trillion unit, 2.2 trillion unit, 2.1 trillion to 2.6 trillion. That would be India's demand. And if I take two scenarios, in one, I raise the share of new renewables minded, not all renewables, up to 17%, 17.7% in 2031. This is somewhat baseline and business as usual. Another, which is more bold, which is accelerated share of new renewables, suppose we target up to going up to 30%. And in this exercise, what I did, whatever was the rise in the share of new renewables, I just reduced the share of coal only, not other things. Now, this 30% would mean that by 2031, about 43 to 45% of power will come from, green power, that is including hydro. If at this rate things move, then by 2050, we can attain 75% penetration of green energy into electricity industry. So these were the scenarios which some of the planners worked out in different institutes, not in the planning commission, not in the government. Now, if I calculate what is the capacity which is required, now those capacity figures, I do not have the slide correspondingly here, are far, far less than the potential, ultimate potential capacity that can permit it. Now, of course, I would not take seriously more than 10 to 15% of that potential to be attainable within such time frame. Even that is realizable, then there should not be big problem in greening the electricity industry within reasonable time horizon. But major thing which would be required, apart from the introduction of more of these new technology introduction, actually I think there are scopes of innovations which will be required. I think our participant colleague mentioned about the alternative solars. I think alternative solar major thing is the CSP, what is called, the concentrated solar power. That is one. And the other technologies which you are mentioning, those are mostly related to the cell technology. But it is for photovoltaic, but the cell is of very improved variety. There is, nanotechnology, solar, then a few others, the names are in my main body of the paper. Gallium arsenide, organic semiconductors, dye-sensitized cells, and nanotechnology solar cells. So a work on solar cells would be required. And the most important thing is this grid development. Strong power grid to be developed, and grid scale energy storage device, one has to think, which may be just a backup hydro plant or a backup gas-based plant. Apart from this, it is of course true that our equipment manufacturing ability, just not getting the device and principle, that is not enough. The manufacturing ability, R&D on new materials, our labs should focus on, and the other important dimension which often we miss out in discussion is the development of skill and knowledge, human resource development. Now, I am delighted to see that in 12th plan document, the provision is there to introduce RE technology education in universities and institutes, in IITs and others. They have also provided for special RE professorial chair, whose function would be, and there is earmarked fund for that. So at least the initiative has started. Now, at what speed it will go ahead depends on how soon the universities, UGC can really convert these opportunities into actual realization. So it requires a very important. Second is, and then next is, since it is knowledge intensive, and we are in a globalized world, technology market is the most monopolistic market. So IPR regime, and here in fact G20 can play a very, very important role. G20 can play an important role in for many of these agendas. But this is one of the critical areas where they can intervene, they can coordinate, and they can see that the developing countries have the opportunity of leapfrogging so far as technology development and application is concerned. And I think the other things are, finally, our reforms process in the power sector. A lot of more need to be done, because this sector has its own specific problems and challenges. The laws, regulations, regulatory commissions, ways of functioning, the jurisdiction, who should look after what, these need to be sorted out and streamlined. So with these, I think it is high time that I should stop.
Thank you. I think you will all agree that Dr. Sengupta's passion for the subject is only matched by G20's passion for ever expanding their agenda. So, okay, we'll take questions. We have about 10 minutes for questions, and I'm sure Dr. Sengupta will only be very happy to take your questions. We'll start from the left here, yes, gentleman here, and then we'll move all the way to the right.
Hello, I am H.L. Kaul from Service International. I am engineer by profession, and I would like to it has been really mind-blowing. I could get a lot of things out of it, but my question is that in thermal coal, the true cost is ranging from 8.63 to 19.44 per kilowatt hour, and average is 14.055, as has been given in your table, what you also expressed also. But has this type of exercise done for hydro, nuclear and wind also? Then what would be the comparison compared to this, particularly thermal, hydro, and because nuclear part of it, the growth story is very slow. It is 3.17 in 2011-12, then it is 5% in 2016-17, and then it is 12% in 2031 and 32. Why the growth story, particularly in the nuclear generation is so low? I mean, it has not been, is it because of the cost analysis or it is something else? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so
One is, one point was about other options, whether we get done it or not. But in generally this true competitiveness discussion, benchmark is taken as coal. That is why I gave the numbers for coal. And as if with coal, we now find out for all others, not only hydro or nuclear, but with coal, if I make a comparison, and then I can get the partial ordering, merit ordering, binary. And if we now exhaust all possibilities, then I have written in the text, the methodology should be that then I just arrive at the complete ordering, who is number one, number two. And here I would like to add this important point. Here it should not be like, what is the cost here and what is the cost for the other option. Rather, take the two options, work out all the basic cost elements, social, environmental and all that. Compare the two and find out what is the saving for item by item with one route vis-a-vis the other route. And then I find out the discounted present equivalent of the saving, whether that is positive or not. And then I get the ordering, which one is better, the binary ordering. So this is the method which I have suggested in the EA. Just mechanical cost-benefit analysis in isolation would not give the complete picture. Okay.
thank you. Yes, Professor.
Actually, I am on the board of one of the wind companies, and I can mention that Indian wind regime is very poor compared to other countries. For example, European wind regimes, you get 40% plus. Our own company which supplies in Brazil, we have a load factor of 48%. In India, the average is around 17, 18, maximum is 33. So we have developed, innovation is a very important thing for low wind regimes. So what has happened now, people have gone for higher capacities, and with tower structure is also important. From lattice structure, they have gone to what is known as tubular structure. Now our company is doing both, a combination of both, and it come to a hub height of 120 meters for low wind regimes in India. So innovation is a very important factor. The other question which is very important here is solar. We talk about solar potential here, but unfortunately calcium arsenide and others don't work in India, the reason being of the high dust factor and high temperatures. In fact, this is again, we'll have to know exactly how to innovate, adapt to Indian conditions. The third thing is there is a slight mistake in your thing, and hydrogen is not an energy source. Hydrogen is a sink or a carrier. It has to come out from some other energy source. So please correct that. It is not,
would you please
hydrogen is not a source.
Oh, hydrogen is not a
Is not a source. So please, you are
Actually, yes, I should
okay,
correct.
please look at that. And the last point I would like to mention.
Hydrogen to I extract.
Last mention I want to mention is with respect to the grid connections. South India, you got like in Tamil Nadu 2000 megawatts, and you find suddenly there's a surge of 2000 megawatts coming in or going off at the grid. This is a problem in Germany where suddenly it comes and goes, Hungarian grid is affected. So the world over, people are looking on smart grids and the manner in which how to stabilize. So this is another area of innovation which needs to be done. So I think if you look at the renewables, the question of which you mentioned about IP, for example, the Tesla Motors, he has said, Elon Musk, that he's prepared to share his technology with everybody. So you may have mentioning the G20, whether you can adopt the Elon Musk model to see whether innovations can be shared so that technological advances can be actually
That is what we mean.
made faster.
Do you want to there's nothing, there's a comment, yeah.
Thank you. This is just a small query. I'm Anand. I'm from the Ministry of Coal. And as usual, a brilliant presentation by Professor. What we have seen, if we see a 20-year span, a longer time span, is the energy sector is extremely vulnerable or to relative price shifts, which is a moment there's a small change in the relative prices, the adoption of any other new source of energy sort of wanes or can take off, either ways. And since most investments take sort of very long time to mature and develop a market, how can G20 help to insulate that? Because especially this is more valid perhaps for countries like India, where, we have seen this just with a small shift because of increased shale oil production, coal is back. Now, a small relative price shift internationally can have implications for the other countries. How can you protect that, or how can you sort of insulate the shift towards renewables because of relative price shifts, short-term relative price shifts?
I think you have raised a very pertinent point, and this can be just not an agenda for any particular day. This can be there among the kind of issues which the G20 should address, because this will go on. Some resource would be coming in, another would become scarcer. So what is going to be, what are the areas of substitution possibilities, where it is a complementarity? So what is, there has to be a continuous research. This is what G20 energy related research should go on doing. There should be some international centers and which it must be true that there are already identified institutes which now G20 should support the continuous inquiry and research in such questions, because this would be there always. Something would come up, something will come down, issues. This is what another important thing. I think you have raised a very valid point, an important point. It is not just a problem of today or tomorrow, but there has to be some institutional mechanism which can continuously answer these related questions to the G20 Secretariat. Okay. Next.
Can I just add there? It's not only the G20. I guess that's a very important question, not only for the G20, of course, and the G20, and also the climate negotiations. But for countries like India, you would want to step back, or developing countries, and ask the question, would you want to insulate your domestic economy from those price fluctuations, and why you would want to do that? I mean, what is the anchor which will drive that process of insulation? That's not clear in the policy establishment today. It's not clear. And if it's clear, then we know what to do. But if the policy establishment or the policy discourse is not clear whether you would want to do that, and for what reasons you want, whether it's for the health externalities, whether it's for the emission, why would you want to do that? And if you would want to do that, then what are the steps you would take? But first, I think we have to ask the first order question. Would you want to interfere with the market mechanism, and why? I think it's an important question, and we need to debate it.
Now, if it is here, the way of my responding would be, just see which public good issue is becoming more important.
Yes, please.
The reason is more from the point of view of investments, because most investments are sunk costs in, if you are talking about the coal sector, we don't look at anything less than 20 years. A mine takes 5 years to 10 years to develop.
Right.
So the moment I step up that, I must look at its demand as well as its use for the next 20 years. So moment I put in investments here, I better have a use for it. Same is true with any other grid-based, network-based solution. So short-term fluctuations can disrupt this process. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, in fact, that is a very valid point.
But the thing which has happened with wind, government actually withdrew two incentives, depreciation and generation-based incentive. 2012, we added 3,000 megawatts. Next year, 1,700. Last year was 1,200 megawatts. Now they have restored it now. So it's very important, which you mentioned, that we have to have stability of policies. Otherwise, there is a problem.
Stability of policy is very, very important. I must know that, well, what is the roadmap